All right, guys, we are here today. We are back. One of my favorite people to talk to, Sienna Jevremov, head distiller and blender of Widow Jane. How are you today? I always only say your first name. I hope I got the last name right.
I am very, very well, and you did indeed get the last name right. Good job. Congratulations.
Hooray! It's always fun to talk to you. Widow Jane, of course, always on my shelf. It's been a minute since the last time we talked. How have you been?
It has been a long time. Yeah, I've been very well. Yeah. You know, released quite a few different whiskeys since then, been blending away. Um, yeah, I mean I think everyone knows the industry is a little in the weird spot right now, but I think, we're set up to be successful and we're producing some really good whiskeys and we're part of a very nice parent company that is looking after us. So I'm feeling pretty chill. Yeah.
Well, I think since the last time we talked, I could not get enough of Decadence.
Mm.
The I have I one of my favorite Widow Jane cocktails right now, and that was one of the things I need some new cocktail ideas from you. I would take the Decadence and a little bit of black walnut bitters.
Mm.
The beauty of how it was blended was Decadence does not need any, in my opinion. I skip a lot of the extra ingredients that you would put in an old fashioned, and I literally just do big cube Decadence, black walnut bitters, and a little bit of citrus, and that's it. And it's just like it's so good for me.
Yeah, no, we definitely, or at least I always am definitely like we're like halfway there to an old fashioned at that point. You've already got the steps taken. Really great whiskey, a little bit of sweetness, just kind of the right combination of the two. Um, so yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that recipe.
It's one of my fun things about cocktails is explaining to people that you don't have to follow the recipe. Like people will fight you on it and be like, no, 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 you got to muddle.
Yeah.
No, hey, first,
Yeah.
never muddle your fruit. If you do, if you want to, it's fine, but it's not the way I do it. And if you use sugar, you don't have to use the sugar that they tell you to use in the recipe. Follow what you want, you know?
Yeah, play around with it. And it's also one of those things where it's like you got to think about whiskey cocktails, especially like the historical whiskey cocktails, where and essentially the added sugar was there to work with more classic styles of whiskey that could be a lot younger, a lot harsher. And
That's
so
right.
they needed the sweetness there to like help just soften and make it a little bit more palatable in that sense. But we're so far away from that world in the world of whiskey. Like our whiskey is so, so good that you don't necessarily need all that extra sweetness to really like balance it out. So don't be too scared to like be downplay it a little bit or use some like less overtly sweet sweeteners.
I love that. I love that. And 100%. Like when people will and again, I don't whatever you like is what you like, but
Oh,
when
of course.
they dump like half a Coke into a whiskey. And I'm like, you did that back in college because whatever you were drinking needed that to get down. I've never thought about it the way you just said it, where whiskey has evolved to a point where there's so much precision in the craftsmanship that goes into it that's accounted for. Like you
Hmm.
don't have to add the thing that you thought you did because that's now been accounted for and it's been made to where it is just artisanal and ready for palate instead of mixer needed for palate.
Yeah, we're away from the world where you had like whiskey specifically made to go with special sodas that like you had the 7 and 7 kind of situation or something like that. I think a lot of people are now. I mean, there's still that exists, which is still fun,
Sure.
whatever. But there's still definitely. I think you look at all of those whiskeys that are on the shelf behind you; those are all intentionally designed to be, great in a glass straight away. And when you approach them in a cocktail setting, you don't need to be quite the same way as you potentially were when you were just doing some sort of unknown white like plastic handle of something you found somewhere. Um,
That was my dad's thing, man. 7 and 7. He had the gigantic golden rocker, and you'd put the big
oh,
handle of plastic 7 on 7, 7 Seagram 7 on there, and then you didn't even have to pour it, Sienna. You
yeah.
just tip it. Like it would
It's
rock
like the
like a
lazy boy of.
yeah, like a baby in a cradle. You just pull it back and it would pour. And he'd just
Oh,
look at
stunning.
like the height of technology, like that's right there. Don't even have to pick it up. Down it goes.
Yeah. He had his bartender. He
Yeah,
didn't need he didn't need to tip no one. He just had his bartender right there. He was the beginning of automation.
he had his workflow. He was the
Yeah.
chat GPT of whiskey
Yeah,
in the
yeah, at that
70s.
time. Yeah.
But that's always what I like about Widow Jane, like the way you explained the whiskey just then for cocktail making. Like you guys have always had such a wonderful through line of let the whiskey talk for itself and let the craftsmanship behind the whiskey be front and center of what you're putting out. For people that have been living under a rock, give me a quick, if you don't mind, just a summation of the backstory, the origin story, if you will, of Widow Jane, because you guys have some fun. Uh, when I first talked to you guys, I think a lot of the um, not everybody associates whiskey with Kentucky and Tennessee.
Mm,
And you
hmm.
guys were one of the first people that I talked to, one of the first brands that I talked to that was coming from a different state. And you guys have really got some cool resources that go into the whiskey production at Widow Jane. So hopefully I didn't just spoil the answer, but if you wouldn't mind, walk me through a little bit of that.
Sure. So Widow Jane started in a place in Brooklyn, a neighborhood called Red Hook, which is kind of along the coast here. So obviously got the little hook, got a couple of different estuaries and offshoots and canals from the East River. And it was started actually as half a chocolate company, half a whiskey distillery. Um, and very small crew, kind of build it, making beans to bar chocolate on one side, and then with a sort of small, 800 liter or so. Actually, no, 650 liter. I don't know where I got 800 from. 650-liter still, um, distilling off some rums and some cacao rum infusions and things like that. Um, but it became pretty quickly obvious that one side being the chocolate side and the whiskey side were kind of not always going to be able to be together. And the whiskey side was growing and growing as the chocolate side kind of, went through its struggles. And the whiskey distillery kind of decided it was figuring out, just like anyone in young New Yorker, was figuring out what it wanted to be. And there were sort of two facets of what it wanted to be. There was the side that really, really wanted to do uniquely New York farmed distillery style distillation. And so one side of us was working in upstate New York, working with farmers up there to essentially initially source a bunch of different heirloom grains, plant those, and heirloom grains are just any grain that existed before before modern day um,
Mass
pollination
produced.
practices,
Right, right.
which is basically GMOing, so where it's like a genetic clone that gets planted in the field versus letting open air pollination occur, letting the field go to seed, letting them pollinate, and then taking that and that being the next generation of seed. So always evolving over time kind of thing. So we grew a bunch of them up there and worked with farmers, and then in the end decided to grow our own corn, which became the Baby Jane corn. And so we've been distilling here from our own corn sources. About 80% of the mash bill is that corn from upstate, and then we also then have a little bit of grain that we get sourced locally as well. That is then distilled here on site, and we are then barreling and aging that. So there was one side of us, but the other side is this great appreciation that we always had for the states that made beautiful, delicious whiskey, and also just our appreciation for what, whiskey is really one of those still things where, despite us all trying really hard to find different ways to shorten or cheat it, a 53-gallon barrel over anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 years is still so hard to replicate. And so, as a young company, we were laying down our stock into these 53-gallon barrels, but we're not ready to crack them open and sell them, which is not obviously a great business plan. And so we started searching around, and we managed to just make some really great connections with people who had some amazing sources of whiskey in Tennessee and in Kentucky and Indiana. We never restricted ourselves to being like, okay, we'll just go to Kentucky, that's the big guys, or we'll just go to Tennessee. We said, well, there's so many varieties of these slight unique changes to the same kind of approach to whiskey. Why not kind of work with those? And we started basically becoming like a blending house that really focused on the after blend, combining across multiple states, combining across multiple ages, and multiple styles, slight variations in mash bills, like different parts of warehouses and stuff to create our own unique kind of individual um, sense of flavors and taste and textures. And that became our 10-year, which is kind of our flagship one. So our 10-year is a 5-barrel blend. So every time done really, really small batches, but done by myself as a blender and my 2 other blending team members. Every single time done by us individually, working on that to create a very consistent, very delicious flavor profile. And then the last component is also a really important part to us, which is we use for all of our proofing or finishing water. We use a limestone water, so a hard mineral-rich water that is trucked down pretty much monthly for us from the Rosendale cement mines, technically is its official name, but it has a great folklore name of being the Widow Jane Mines. Many different stories for who the widow was. Everyone has their own favorite. But they all sort of have the same tagline that there was the original owners of the mine who was not kind of that nice of a guy, kind of very classic, kind of your classic 1%er billionaire owning a lot of land and kind of using the people.
And for the
And
time
then
period, I've always pictured him with like a handlebar mustache, like with
curling it up, yeah,
uh-huh.
definitely.
Like that's how
Exactly.
I've always pictured this guy.
Yeah, but he also had so many failed businesses that I also like picture him as being a bit daft as well. Like he was just like he had tried so many things and it never quite stuck. Um, but but then the idea of this kind of the more beloved, the more loved, and then also the one that in the end outlived, being the one that kind of lasted, the story that lasted, the name that lasted, with being his widow Jane or the widow Jane. Amazing cabins, great resource for cement, limestone cement, but also you got a lot of this wonderful rainwater falling through giant pools of water, about 30 miles of mine there, building with the water, and really it's got a large quantity of magnesium and calcium in there, both that add a really nice special touch to our whiskey. We felt that adding them there gave this, New York's all about our water. We understand that these certain things can really, really make a difference in your final product. And of course, you can just use really stripped down, reduced water, like RO water, like most companies do, but you're kind of missing out on that special touch when it comes to added character. And so we chose to use limestone water because it has this great kind of, it's hard water. We know it sort of has this almost tacky, sticking quality to it. Has a real physical presence, but it also has a way of sort of really enhancing and changing certain notes within the whiskey. Something that kind of just through trial and error we figured out that this water really did certain things to our whiskey stocks. One being it kind of created this perceived sweetness that was a little hot, like a little bit stronger. Nothing, we're not saying it makes it incredibly sweet. We're saying that there is this perceived sweetness. If you're really sitting there with a glass of the whiskey, you can really make that big difference. And so that also became our kind of not name, became our branding. And it really is a large part of, who we are. This kind of deep, dark, wet, mysterious cavern is definitely kind of like the sort of describes us in a weird way. But yeah, so we've been here, distilling, laying out our Baby Jane stock, also bringing in these source barrels. We have a program where we do finishes. We've only just released our first spirit finish. We've always been someone about really staying tried and true to wood finishes being just new American oak, and it's just exploring the varieties of American oaks and other international oaks and seeing what they could do to the blend. But also now we've finally done our first spirit finish with our Tequila Ocho release. But we recently got purchased or kind of enveloped, more like adopted, I like to think of, by Heaven Hill. It's been about, I think, 3 or 4 years now. And so now we're part of this much greater family, which is kind of amazing for us because that means that now we are distilling Baby Jane whiskey, not only here in New York, but also at Burnham Distillery in Louisville, where most of the HH reg is made. And then we also obviously have great access to some amazing Kentucky stock as well as just places to age our whiskey down there as well. But yeah, so it's been kind of a lot going on in not a lot of time for a young whiskey company. But that's a very rambling history of Widow Jane. I've been here too
No,
long. I've been here since the beginning, so my brain is just jammed full of all the stories, and I'm trying to pick the ones that make sense when you put them together.
No, I love it because there's so many things you touched on right there that I think the time period that all of this was happening in is very important because
Mhm.
now people are striving to do what you guys were doing from the beginning. You
Mhm.
mentioned heirloom grain. First butcher rye I ever had, or the first butcher corn produced
Mhm.
whiskey I ever had, was from you guys. It
Mhm.
was that butcher that you put out because it was that heirloom grain that you guys were obsessed with. It was that
Mhm.
same farm to table mentality where real ingredients going in makes a difference in the final flavor. The multiple state grains that you would pull from or the multiple states whiskey that you would source from for your blends. Everybody was not being as transparent as you guys were being at that time about what you were doing. And it built this wonderful brand trust that I think the consumer has always had with Widow Jane, that you guys are going to stand behind what you put out because it's just like you're not really doing it. You're doing it because you're making something good. And the fact that people like it's just sort of a wonderful byproduct of what you're doing because you're really just trying to geek out and create cool shit.
Yeah. We're very, very New York in that way, where we're kind of like, yeah, we're doing what makes something good. Like
That's right. It's
that's how we're gonna do it because it's a good way to do it and it tastes good and we believe in it. And I think it's funny when we first started off, people were kind of like, they were so unused to this style of transparency in that way, but they didn't realize it kind of like that by putting the states on the Barrett Bear thing and saying we're blended and by being like kind of unabashed by that, um, they were almost like they had the opposite reaction where they were like, oh, like this doesn't seem like you're being transparent enough. And it's like, no, we're being as transparent. like we're really telling you exactly everything. But they were just so unused to that initially.
it was
Um,
so weird to see because it'd
yeah.
be like, this is where it came from. This is what it is. This is how much time it spent in and how now please enjoy. They're like, wait a second. By
Yeah,
telling us everything, you're obviously hiding something.
exactly. It was always very, very a very surreal reaction.
But then they got into the bottle and they got into the glass and they'd be like, okay, take me to church.
Yeah.
And now this last evolution where you guys, I like the adopted by Heaven
Yeah.
Hill. A
Definitely
lot
feels
of
much more like
people
that.
they don't understand that for whiskey to really have sustainability, they need those pockets that come with large brands. And Heaven Hill is the best example of like they take care of their own. Look at the brands that fall under that umbrella and look at how Connor and Bernie and Adam and everybody involved with the entire thing care so much about it. So I think a beautiful adoption, as you put it, so
Mhm.
that it gives you guys the resources that you need to be in every market and not have to worry about some of the problems that come along. Why do you see craft guys go away? They
Yeah.
go away because they either run out of money, run out of product, or run out of distribution. Like
Yep.
those are the problems. And Heaven
Yeah.
Hill is the perfect frickin' partner to help you guys get over that hump.
Yeah, we definitely lucked out because, obviously COVID hit people really hard. And we managed to kind of pull through that decently well, due to just kind of the way that the company that we were initially part of was running it and, really supported us, and kind of allowed us to survive a little bit. And also people who were really drinking quite a lot of whiskey at that time, for obvious reasons. They needed a little pick me up. And if it tasted really good, that's the best. But then now we have kind of like the highly competitive industry that we're in right now. I mean, every day I open up and there's like a new whiskey company opened up, which I find like the most back, or a new whiskey new whiskey brand coming out,
Right,
not
right.
necessarily new company or new distillery. Um, they're got the highly competitive, but also for a kind of turbulent, uh, not necessarily shrinking, but kind of reconfiguring industry right now, and market. Um, so I think we were really lucky that we got picked up by Heaven Hill because that definitely really allowed us to feel secure and not make like rash decisions, and also just be able to continue to be ourselves authentically. Which I think is kind of the most important thing, is being, if that's the real thing that would kill us, if we had to make sacrifices to survive. and then I think we wouldn't really be who we were anymore.
That's the nail on the head, right? Like you
Yeah,
see companies that get into financial straits, and the next thing you know, they're putting out something that doesn't match what they would have put out previously. And consumers, you just said it, it's a very hard marketplace right now. And the only way to get the consumer's attention is to excel, not diversify. So if you were to
yeah,
take a step backwards, then boom, that's not the fourth bottle, that's not the fifth bottle, that's a one and done.
yeah,
So you guys had a benefit too with COVID, that you were such a you were so craft, and it was such a tight knit group of people
hmm,
that you didn't have 100 folks to worry about. You
yeah,
guys were a tight team, and you were able to pivot based on the numbers that you had at your disposal, and you weren't
hmm,
so broad that you had to make emissions to any part
yeah.
of your workflow.
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, yeah, we were such a small crew. We were able to just stagger shifts and not have to see each other nearly as much being in a essential essential business, we came in kind of like 3 months or so into lockdown. Um and yeah, we all just kind of kept as much distance as we could from each other and hovered around and did split shifts and things like that. And we were very lucky to have a small team, but a small, very strong, tight knit team. And yeah, and really good leadership at that time as well. And we always,
100%.
and we continue to have really good leadership. Yeah, I also, I'll say one more thing about Heaven Hill, just because I've
Yeah,
already talked about them. But I think the fact that we are also currently owned by Heaven Hill, who are a privately owned,
that's right.
their family run company, is
That's right.
also something. I think that's the only place we would have been able to really fit in, to be honest, amongst the big guys. But you see right now why that is such a positive thing, where you're seeing a lot of these other um larger companies that I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but you see that they've had to make choices where it's just cutting whole brands or cutting down because they have to appease,
The numbers.
shareholders, and
Yeah.
yeah, shareholders as they're beholden to someone, or they're beholden to a billionaire, versus with us, the money we make is just the money that is then going to hopefully continue to grow and support us all once again. Kind of like it sounds so corny to describe it as a family, but it really often does feel like we're one big family.
That's what you need in
Yeah,
whiskey, right?
yeah,
You and granted you get into the cousins and third cousins and first cousin scenario, but you do need that synergy between all of the pieces, so
yeah,
that you guys are able to do family. I think of it more like a workflow, where
yeah,
you need the business side, the family owned business side, to have the family's best interest at heart,
yeah,
and not so that's their job. Their job is
yeah,
to have that in mind. Your job is to have best whiskey coming out of Widow Jane possible in mind.
yeah,
And as it breaks down across every brand associated, it's that same mentality where none of us are being asked to do something we're not good at.
yeah.
All of us are just
No, it's 100% true.
flowing, yeah, with
Yeah,
what we do, and that's helping create this gigantic everybody wins scenario.
yeah, definitely.
And I've always, just from a flavor standpoint, Widow Jane's always had a point of view. You've been with it from the get go. How did you guys, when you were when you were bringing in all the different sources for the blends, like how did you get, like you've always been consistent. Like
Mm,
everything that you've put out, it's always had a through line where there, and I love the funk. When you put the funk at the base of the funk, there's Widow Jane. When you
mm,
go with like the decadence, when you have that partnership with the maple, it wasn't maple Widow Jane, it was Widow Jane maple. Like
hmm.
how have you guys been able to so consistently create that through line and still be not boring, I guess is the way to ask that. Because you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like when you guys
yeah,
do special things, there's like, oh, this has got its own personality, but it's still Widow
yeah.
Jane. It's a hard line that some folks do not walk as well as you guys do.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I'm blushing over here. But yeah, I think for us, I think it is definitely the way we work as a blending house, in that we are working first of all we understand our sources, and we understand what our selections of whiskey are providing for us and what they can do, while also still allowing there to be some really fun, flexible qualities to them. We don't just have like only 10-year stock because we have 10-year. We let them age up. They're sitting with us. We can only get to certain barrels at a certain time and things like that. And we'll put some aside if we feel like those flavors would be better in the future and things like, or different projects. Um, and then of course we have our sources being so diverse and being so interesting and unique. So we really have this wonderful palette of colors to work with. You've kind of got like that, 125 pack of Crayola crayons with all the extra colors. So we're really dealing with a really great selection of um, products and or whiskeys and tastes and flavors and textures and all of that. And then of course we have the water on top of that. And then we have some great cooperages that we work with, and we kind of have all these other wonderful nuanced ways of having flavor and wood added while still kind of beholden to like, just kind of using whole barrels, still doing it kind of in a very classic way and toasting and charring and things like that. But in the long run, it kind of just comes down to, you know, like three of us. We kind of get together, and there's the three of us, and well, technically we have a ghost fourth other, which is our PC. But there's the three of us, and we develop these recipes. And if they just aren't something we want to do, we never try and force it. Like we don't want to force ourselves to like put out a product that we're not interested in, or like just come up with innovation for innovation's sake. Like we have innovation meetings pretty much monthly, but on those innovation meetings, a lot of the time it's us just being like, no, we're not doing this. Like it's a
Right,
lot of
right.
like no's or like why's. Unless something really sparks our interest, like the Tequila Ocho product, that was like years in the making. That was something where it was like many times we went back to this idea of kind of these spirit finishes, and we've done so many different trials, and we were like, yes, no, something like didn't make sense. And then finally we just had kind of like the right idea and the right recipe and the right moment that made sense to us. We kind of felt very satisfied with our selection of SKUs that we already had with what we had, and this felt like a nice moment to introduce something a little different. I don't know if it was also just like where we were within our blending life cycle and like maturity within that palette wise. Um, but and then consistency is, yeah, I mean, it just comes, that's pretty much half of my job as a blender. Half of my job of a blender is just make sure that this is Widow Jane. First of all,
Right,
this is
right.
Widow Jane, and then first of all, this is the 10-year, this is the decadence, this is this, this is this. Um, that's always the question I ask right off the bat, first and foremost. And then from there, it's then okay, now making it the best version that I can of this blend of that product. Um, which can be very, very frustrating at times because sometimes you got some like amazing blend that's like completely left field though for a 10-year, and you're like, okay, this is not going to work. But you have to like rework it even then you're like, but it tastes so good. But you're like, but this is not what we are promising to people. This is not the product we're putting out. This is not the 10-year. And also, hey, I love the 10-year. I want it to kind of taste like that. Let me go back to that product. Um, and yeah, that's kind of how, we do that. But then, yeah, when we're developing new recipes, we'll also apply that very similar thing. If it's going to be within the family, so say with like the Baby Jane products, which is one of the newer ones we would just release, kind of really big new recipe that we put out. Um, we actively made the choice to, yeah, there she is. We actively made the choice to go with a blend of specific barrel sauces. So we have we have a little family again of Baby Jane sauces. We have our New York component where it's all done here, but then we have a couple of different distillery sites across Kentucky and Indiana. We kind of knew that we were potentially would like to have additional sources because we've already figured out that can add some really interesting colors, but we've never had the ability to have different sources of whiskey where the recipe and everything else, and like even me, technically the distiller, was down there running and like making sure it was staying tried and true. But of course, different stills, slightly different, like, ways, slightly different barrel aging areas and things like that. All these like slight tours that come from the distilleries themselves and the states and things like that. We made an active choice to blend actually across three different sources that we have. We chose to go with different Kentucky ones and then the New York, because we found that these two different Kentucky ones, one of them we could have completely left out, but when we were sitting there and trying and tasting, I like I just went to I like distinctly remember the day where we like sat there and I brought it to my team, and I was like, so I'm gonna have you guys try this one, and you know, and this one, but then I'm gonna have you guys try this as well, and I want you to tell me like which one do you think really is not the best, or like not the best, but no, it is not just like they're both good, but I want you to tell the one that's Widow Jane. And I probably explained it as poorly as that. And yeah, the first one was essentially this very easy, sweet, just like very smooth, like kind of drinking, kind of like almost like a little bit of like a lemony honey tea beverage. It was just like really soothing, really lovely. And then the other one had that component, but there was this kind of like interesting little bit of herbaceousness that came in that would pull in with a almost like chamomile tea quality to it, or you know, it did read a little differently in different ways, a bit of hay. It would just added this like interesting kind of like almost thought of salinity there, or like something savory. Um, and it was a difficult component. It was a difficult one to balance it in there. But we kind of unanimously decided that would be what we would go with, because that is more Widow Jane. We're not known as a company that puts out a whiskey. We're known as a good whiskey that you can drink and you'll want to keep on drinking. But it's not a whiskey that is like you drink and don't think about. You're always there with the whiskey. It's not something that you can just kind of glug 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 and it's
Right,
just
right.
going down. It's something where you know you always you're present. You're thinking about the whiskey as you're drinking it, because it's got spice, but then it's got this great some hint of fruit that you didn't expect to come in, and then there's this wonderful chocolatey note that kind of is lingering in the background, and then the whole thing starts over again with your next sip kind of thing. So um I guess kind of just knowing ourselves well enough, and you know, I've worked here since the beginning. Michelle, who's on our team as well, is worked here since a month more than I have. And Jacob is been running our bar now for quite a while, and so he knows pretty much all of our spirits, maybe in more even more than us, because he's sitting there working with them cocktails and working with them recipes on a daily basis, which is a whole nother way of understanding whiskey. And then I understand kind of coming from the distiller's side and that kind of aspect of it, and like knowing kind of where Jane's stock as we lay it down, and also trying the barrels as they come in and things like that. um I think, yeah, we are kind of the little guardians of what the idea of Widow Jane is. um and so I think that's kind of how we maintain 10 hours later after that's how we answer I can answer your question, is it's by consistency is constantly something we strive towards, whether it be consistency just of product, but also consistency of what it means to be a Widow Jane product. Yeah.
I love that, and I've always we've never actually talked about that. I've always wondered if it was that tight knit group, because you know
Hmm.
some companies uh, pick by committee, or
Yeah.
uh, get a trial by not trial by what am I they bunch of people.
Consumer. Yeah, they get
And
like a
yeah,
consumer tasting. Yeah.
and that's just you guys, you're stewards of your brand, you know what Widow Jane is, and you're so drilled down on it after all these years that you're able to pick it up out of a lineup that this is for us, or this is
Mhm.
us,
Yeah.
versus something that's not. uh, does it ever get a you seem like you're still having a lot of fun, like the way you just explained that you're smiling the whole time, you can tell that like you're passionate about it. When you're tasting through, does it does it ever feel, is there that distinction between I'm drinking whiskey and this is a job, when you have to pick out the uh inconsistencies or the flaws? Because I mean, half of what you do is look for the flaw so that when I get it, I don't taste the flaw. Does that ever take you out of I'm making whiskey, or is it still just like, nah, it's still a good day? There might be a little bit of frickin' peppercorn that I hadn't planned on, but it's still a
Yeah.
damn good pour.
Yeah. No, there's definitely no, I think it's part it's like definitely it's part and parcel. I think it's like it's kind of you don't want to have troubles, you know, but you also it means that at least when you're kind of in this, like when I guess talking in the blending stage, if it comes to about back bottle, then I'm probably a little disappointed with myself. But when it comes to when we're in the blending stage still, um it just kind of it just sort of, I guess, validates one in a way. You know, there's a reason you're here. You're like the fact you can't just blindly throw barrels together and it works out kind of thing. Is kind of it validates you, and it's fun to have that puzzle to figure it out. And it also really what it teaches you is that it's not like those barrels, that barrel that you pull out and say, well, you're not working in this blend, mate. You don't taste great. It's not like we're then like, get out of here, barrel, and we'll never
Right.
use you. It's like that it really hones true that like there is a place to make that one shine. You know, maybe there's this really tannic kind of one that's just absolutely ruining a blend. But that's because there's other barrels that are kind of adding some similar notes, but they also have their own sweetness and fruitiness. And so you just need to find another one that's missing that component. Maybe you're missing from that one, actually, you're missing a little bit of spice or heat, or you kind of need to lighten it up, or like, and maybe it's too tight. So you need something in a barrel that's going to kind of just loosen up those flavors so it's not all too sweet and stodgy. But then that one really kind of bitter barrel that you pulled out, you can find a blend where it becomes so saccharine that it starts to get to the stage of being like artificially sweet or having this like weirdness, or there's like a just too much. It's so easy that it kind of like bottoms out a little bit. That barrel can go in there and it's not bitter anymore. It's chocolate. It's coffee. It's just one like for the funniest tasting note for whiskey ever, which is oak. Um, yeah, tastes like wood. Funny enough. So yeah, so I don't know. I think it's continuing. It's that things like that make it continually exciting. It's almost boring when you just keep making if you just make blend and it's easy and that kind of thing. It's the I think that's actually what kind of keeps things interesting for sure.
Well, that's like when you said a moment ago that when you were picking out something and there's one that's like, oh, this is really good, but it's not Widow Jane. That's
Yeah.
not going away. You now
Yeah.
have that in your Rolodex as this is really good. And the next time you need that puzzle piece to fill into a Widow Jane project, it's coming back.
Oh yeah.
It's just not Widow Jane right now.
Yeah, I have an obscenely large amount of notepads lying around that are all got like strange scribbles of remember this about this and this kind of thing. To really kind of uh yeah, that knowledge will be utilized somewhere for sure.
Well, and you said it a moment ago, like and I think you guys did it very well with Decadence, the ability to not let it go too sweet and not let it go too far in one direction to where you get some of that it goes too bitter or it goes too saccharine. So easy to do. So many people have tried the maple route and not done it as well as you guys did, and it is because of what you just said, where you'll get with something like that. It is you want to be able to drink two of them. You can't
Hmm.
have that second sip, or you can't have that like that first sip. You get, whoa, ooh, this is, but then if
Hmm.
the second sip is mouth coating and debilitating for your forward pours, then you've kind of one and done yourself. And I
Yeah.
thought that was a nice thing about Decadence was that you were able to enjoy it and
Yeah.
not be limited by it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's Decadence is always been I spend a lot of time when I'm blending Decadence because that is like a large, and it actually has a two-pronged part to the blending cycle. We actually blend about 15 barrels or so, which is pretty big for us. And it can get difficult when you get kind of big because then you have to find like the one weird one
Right,
that's
right.
like if it's throwing a lot off or whatever. But that we have these 15 barrels that we blend specifically knowing that they're going to be meeting maple syrup. And so I'll have a little bottle of maple syrup to test it with, but obviously it's so hard to kind of dose that as that amount in. So it's kind of like keeping within the profile, but we kind of know creating that base blend with the intention of that and knowing that it's going to go kind of in the barrel and sit and meld for a little bit. And then of course those barrels very specifically, we actually get very specific barrels in the Decadence. It's not just like leftovers from the 10-year.
Right.
We very specifically get in some more Indiana
Things
barrels that are a little on the younger side.
that can stand up
Um,
to that.
exactly. Something that's got a little bit more spice, a little bit more heat, a little bit more kind of like bright, youthful zestiness. So we take those barrels that are a little bit more kind of have that quality to them, and then blend them specifically so they're going to sort of have they have their own sweetness. We kind of like when there is already a perceived maple flavor there, or at least some creaminess, because we know that we don't want to add so much syrup to have to get that maple flavor. We want the two to kind of meet in the middle, because otherwise we have to just add huge amounts of syrup, then it's just going to once again go into that realm, which I think is sometimes maybe where they fall. You don't think about the whiskey having its innate own quality that's going to lean towards the maple first, and then they meet in the middle, versus just being like, oh, we need to add, it needs to taste like maple syrup, so we have to put as much as we possibly can. And so we do that blend, and then we let them rest for anywhere for 6 months to a year. And then we then blend again, finally, in 5 barrels at a time to kind of create those small individual batches. And that just allows us to kind of, once again, layer in and make sure that everything is hitting just right. Because you can never really know until you get that kind of final resting point, really how the maple is going to express and how it meets those whiskey flavors. And so being able to then take it again and reblend it in these kind of smaller, more controlled batches, I think is then kind of why you get a product that is consistently good and easy, and a maple one of, I mean, yeah, it is
Nuanced
definitely
and
it
not
is, yeah,
overpowering.
definitely, yeah, I've never had really anyone ever go like, oh, that's just a maple whiskey. Like everyone's always been like, oh wow.
Widow
Like there's
Jane.
always been this moment where they're like, they don't quite have the words, but they're like, this is different from what I expected. This is different from what I've ever had. Um,
Which those
but
are the
this is
best
also
compliments.
delicious.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep, yeah, a lot of work goes into it, but it's definitely worth it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. When it works, that the all of the work that goes into it, and when it works, to see somebody light up when they try it, and to
Mhm.
hear the compliment of like, was the never had anything like this before, and it's damn
Yeah.
good whiskey. That's like
Yep.
that's what it's not. I mean, you don't do it for that, but it's definitely a nice little.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of do it for that. I require validation, like everyone else. Give me compliments, please.
Hey,
Um,
I get up on stage and talk about myself for an hour. I completely know about needing a little bit of affirmation.
yeah, exactly. There we go. There we go.
It's a great segue into
Mm,
this new offering, though,
mm,
because this is the first time you guys have done something like this. I
mm.
love that you didn't go easy. Like you could have gone sherry, you could have gone for a wine finish, you could have easily picked some lob balls, but you went straight to one of the hardest things to accurately pull off and went with a tequila finished whiskey. I know you decently enough to where I think I know why, but tell me why you decided to go with Ocho right out of the gate.
Well, so I've been fighting doing spirit finishes for a really long time, because it really is, in the whiskey world, that's kind of when you start going down that like rabbit hole of like, okay, now the whole world of new whiskey, like spirit finishes, is open to you. And then you kind of like, that's like a place where you can kind of get like lost in the sauce of like, okay, now I'm going to import one. And like, then that's when you start to see people consistently coming out with new and new and new and new, different spirit finishes. But, we're so weird and obsessive about everything. So we've been so obsessed with like new wood varieties and that kind of thing. We still are, and just like using finishing and that kind of quality, and then also blending. Like we're already a very complicated product with lots of different like things that we're like kind of like obsessed with and creating. So spirit finishes is something I pushed for a long time, and so I wanted it to make sense. Um, and we've done a bunch of, as I said, we do these innovation kind of calls, and I have a bunch of trial bottles. Like I'm actually sitting in front of my like blending area. These are all my samples organized, and then this is my messy table full of whiskey samples that I've been blending. There's actually Decadence. I'm blending behind me, weirdly enough.
Oh,
Um,
beautiful.
yeah, this will be a Decadence blend. But the where was I going? Oh yeah, so I have a bunch of these bottles sitting around, kind of like experiments we'll bring out and everything and again. And for some strange reason, we just kind of kept coming back to this idea of like what makes sense, which of course the only time that, people have taken our barrels mainly for beer or something like that. But Tequila Ocho, I still remember that when I first tried their version, their reposado with our barrels. and just kind of seeing the way they approached it, which is super interesting, very light-handed. I mean, you can see on the color, they're such a pure, beautiful tequileria. They make some amazing, make them beautiful products, and they really subtle, gentle touch. And that was when I was first kind of like becoming a blender. Really, was in those days when I was still like learning the craft, and like seeing that way of approaching it was like, I was like, yeah, well, that's definitely how I want to be as a blender when it comes to those kind of things. Like using it, but only using it to make my product greater. And so, yeah, so I kind of that lovely idea of that, seeing that. And so then I wanted to, so we were like, okay, well, this makes sense. Let's bring it in. Let's trial it. So initially I was just trialing by like, obviously dosing in little bits of tequila and figuring it out and seeing how it kind of went. And that kind of gave us enough trust to then bring the barrels in, lay them down. And then, yeah, we played around with the recipe a few times, and then we kind of actually settled on that it works to put it actually kind of in a 10-year blend. And then one of those barrels being one of these Tequila Ocho finished barrels. We let just 8 months was all we felt we really needed at that point. That was enough time to really express the tequila flavor without overdoing so many extra oaking. I mean, these barrels are pretty exhausted, so you're not going to get too much, but we didn't want too much more additional oxidation and that kind of thing. We kind of felt like this was ready. We wanted that flavor. We didn't want the tequila to start oxidizing too much and think like start to get some losses there. We wanted it to be just balanced and melded enough, but still be present. And then yeah, the blending process was pretty long. It took us quite a while to get just 11 batches is all that was made out of that. So it just took us that much time to get there, but it was really, really important for us. And it was once again one of those situations where I lined up a bunch of different recipes and I was like, okay, let's go through this. Let's decide who this is, what one we think of. And we ended up deciding, we were like, this is the perfect amount of tequila flavor. Like you get the flavor is there, but it's not whiskey. It is first and foremost delicious, tasty Widow Jane whiskey.
Right.
And the tequila, instead of being like, okay, this is whiskey and then tequila, it's more like those through notes that it brings, that it has, are doing things to the way that the flavors of the whiskey are tasting to you. Like it definitely like really brightens up the fruit into a whole new level. And this, but then with the sweetness, it veers is in this kind of really interesting kind of cooked sweetness that's very different from your average like caramels that you normally get in a whiskey, or brown sugars or something. It kind of always gives it this like sometimes dulce de leche, sometimes like flanny kind of qualities where there's like a tang there. And then you obviously get that kind of like sort of subtle vegetal, but it kind of marries with the spices. And so it's not so much like the spices you normally get in whiskey, but it's more like black tea and like marigolds, like some herby florals and things like that. And it was just really, really exciting for me to see and be able to find the perfect place where the tequila there is just another component that just adds to this amazing popping of like flavors and colors, rather than you drinking a whiskey and going like, this is bourbon and tequila.
Right.
I didn't want it to be like a really bad Long Island iced tea situation or something where we're just layering in every alcohol we can and you're going to taste it all at once. And so I think that was kind of really the major aim, and I think we did a pretty good job of it. And yeah, I think decision came from the fact that it made sense to us to bring in the barrels and to do this collaboration because of that. But also I think it came in because we felt like this was we've never shy away from a challenge here at Widow Jane. We like challenges, especially for the blending team. And it also felt like something that was, even though people have done it a bunch, I don't think we felt like hadn't been enough properly said about this combination of the two things. And yeah, I guess I could keep going on waxing poetic about it, but that's kind of what it is. It's, to me, it's like, we just had our release of this, and some one person was like, yeah, I've tried a lot, and I'm really pleased to see where you're going. Like recently, there's been a resurgence, and there's been quite you belonging to this new resurgence of tequila finished whiskeys, and they're so much better than they were before. And I think I was like, yeah, I don't know, somewhere along the way, someone really suddenly realized that you don't need, shouldn't be bourbon and tequila fighting themselves in a bottle. That's not the whole point of it. It's making a good bourbon, and that's one of the things we did have to defend it to the greater powers that be. Because obviously, in the long run, we are part of a company, and so we have our blends and we stand by them and we fight for them. But then also we have other people who try them because that's the whole point. We want people's profiles. We want
Of course.
everyone. So we always constantly giving people the experiences to try it. And this is probably the one that has had the most, for lack of, for a very millennial slang way of saying it, but has had the most haters. Um, but I was like, in the long term, the best thing was I would always be so like, okay, great, that's your opinion. like I'm, and it was, to be fair, it was mainly tequila drinkers, and I was like, that's fine. We're not making tequila.
Tequila. Right, right.
Like you're a tequila drinker, you willingly admit that. You will enjoy bourbon, but your thinking is bourbon. But as soon as the word tequila's there, you're like gonna start judging it in this different way. And that was not the point. We're trying to make a new, delightful, delicious bourbon
Right.
for bourbon drinkers.
Oh, that's so interesting. I think that sums up the way a lot of people approach something they've never had before, though, right? Like
Yeah,
they take the thing that they are most comfortable with and they apply their comfort zone to the thing that's going to be new and out of their comfort zone.
yeah,
It's the same way that like your favorite band, you loved that first album so much that then when they had to grow and try something else, you're like, screw you, Pearl Jam. And then a month in, you're like, oh, okay, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. Thank you,
yeah,
Pearl Jam. It just
exactly.
offering yourself up to experience that in a different way. And
Yeah,
some people it's hard. It's especially with the whiskey consumer who, I mean, look at where we are. Look at how far we've come since 2010 in
mm,
terms of we're going to do it the exact same way forever from before till now. And now from then till here, we're just all over the map and experiencing all these different things that we never had access to before because for the longest time it was good mature bourbon and you couldn't do anything with that. And there's nothing against that. I mean
no,
that whole
we
that's
have
how we
plenty
get
of
to the
those
dance.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's yeah, the whiskey. Yeah, it is very funny that we went from a world of like, we want just the good, strong bourbon. We wanted that and that kind of thing. To now like the bit like the constant being like, so what's the next new thing coming out?
Right,
And you're
right.
like, yeah. And now it's like I'm almost to this point where like, okay, calm down now. Let's find a middle ground there. Like we got
That's where
the
you
classics
guys
are still good.
that's why when you told me you were coming out with the Ocho, I was like, bravo, man. You guys could have of all the low-hanging fruit you could have swung for, you went for like the frickin' eighth level big boss. You didn't start on Mario level 1, you went for like King Koopa level 8. Uh the because there is a fatigue. I liken it to combat sports. Like if you see somebody get hit in the head with a chair every time they go to the ring, then you're not going to be impressed by it when you see it for the 19th thousandth time. And that's sort of what all of this and now we're going to do this and now we're going to do this and now we're going to do this. You guys
Yeah.
picked the one that matched you and you've brought it through in your own voice. It's the most Widow Jane way to approach it.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I hope you're enjoying the smell, at least the nose.
I've not have not had any yet. I figured we're sitting here with Sienna from Widow Jane. If we're going to be trying this new Ocho finished Widow Jane, that I might as well try it with you for the first time. So
Perfect.
it's been sitting here for about 45 minutes and it's been opening up. And like we've been saying, my favorite part about the nose is that the first thing I get is Widow Jane. And then after that, then you start getting into some of the more delicate, some of the vanilla, a little hint of that pepper, some of the more ornate flavors that are in the universe of tequila. But at no point in time is there a tequila nose to this delightful whiskey.
Hmm.
Oh man, I'm going in. Cheers.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh my goodness. Oh, it's bright. Oh, it's got such a wonderful brightness to it. How did you do that? How did you okay, because you get out of the gate, you're getting Widow Jane, obviously. So I'm gonna that's our through line. Everything I say after that, Widow Jane's there first. But you're getting these beautiful organic notes to it, like these beautiful like there's a hint of vegetal to it. and there's this wonderful, like there's still some hay right there, and then as it keeps going, and it doesn't dissipate. Like it's already shifting back to the sugars, and you're getting the brilliance here is in the subtlety of flavor notes that are intermingling through the Widow Jane notes. Because you've got your sugars, you've got your vanillas, you've got your brown sugar, all of that that you know and love, but then you've also got these hint notes swimming around, sort of through the stream, if you will, of the flavors that you've put down, and it creates this wonderful bright frickin' bright mouth feel. Doesn't dry the tongue out at all. Some of the tequila finishes can dry the tongue out, and it doesn't do that. It kind of like uh, hits the side palate and makes you salivate for like a little more instead of the over sugar palate.
Yeah.
Which
I mean, we definitely lucked out with Tequila Ocho being our partnership that we were able to do. They have just such gorgeous estate tequilas. They're just so wonderful in their own right that I think we kind of it definitely was a great partnership there.
well, and all of it's so like you said it perfectly. Like none of it's taking over. All of it's doing what you want to have something do when you have a finished barrel. Is it's adding to what was already there and heightening it instead of taking away from or distracting from the base liquid.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not, yeah, this is not we did not do this because we were trying to cover up bad whiskey with tequila. We were
Which is
really
the
wanted to put, yeah.
isn't that the fun part of where we are right now? Like
Yeah.
it's no longer sort of the hiding. It's no longer the magician's trick of sleight of hand. It is
Yeah.
now artistry of we've got this thing, and we wanted good to get great, and we did these two things, and it's made awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely this one. I think that what gave me the courage to do this one was one of the vaults where we did the Ambriana,
Mm,
which was not this past year, but the year before's
right.
release. And yeah, that was like, a wood that's inherently known for being a cheaty wood for bourbon makers and stuff. And I was like, no, 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 no. I want to use it in a way that the whiskey itself is really begging for this little note, but it's to work together rather than to like cover or distract or um and things like that. So being able to kind of achieve that with such a crazy wood, crazy flavor, and such a sort of notorious wood as well now in the
Uh-huh.
bourbon world, I think that finally gave me courage to be like, okay, we can do this. We can do this with the tequila. And it definitely was like a lot of like when we were blending these together, it was a lot of like having to be very like stern about it and being like, nope, you have to reblend that one. It's not quite right. I'm sorry, it's almost there, but not quite right. And people saying that to me too. There's multiple ones. There was a 12th barrel, but it didn't make it into a blend because it just couldn't, it wasn't working. So
Is that
that's how
meticulous? Was that out of your comfort zone to be that meticulous about it, or was it just something where you had to wear that hat because you knew that's what it needed?
that's how we always are.
Gotcha.
That's
Gotcha.
yeah. I'm not necessarily a perfectionist, but um, I like to I like to dissect and get nitty gritty.
Take the
Um,
pieces apart and put them back together in a way that makes it better.
yeah.
It is absolutely, I like, you can't stop drinking it. Like it's got a lot going on. Again, I'll say it one more time. First and foremost, it's Widow Jane. I think that's still my favorite part about this, and everything that you put with it. The finish is also fantastic. The finish just sort of like it stays like right here. Like it's got that wonderful thing where it heats you up, of course, but it's not a heater to the point where it's stopping you from moving forward, and it stays right below those side palate, like right at the top of the throat, to where you're really just getting some of those juices out of it. Like the juice notes come back and then kind of revisit the palate a little bit. The way you want to finish, the way I want to finish to be, where it kind of works with the rest of what you got going on.
Hmm.
Good Lord. That is absolute. So this is out now, right? This is a thing that people
Yeah.
can go, they can go, I want this, and it'll be there for them.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in every state because as I said, there was only 11 5 barrel batches, so not a massive amount of whiskey produced. So I think it is certain quantities in certain states. Um, but we're pretty far and wide. Actually might even have a list of who currently has it.
Well, the
Let's
beauty
see.
is if people go to widowjane.com, you guys have an entire find section where you
Yeah,
can go and look for your area and what's in your area right now. If you like the Lucky 13, that's there. If you want something from the vaults, you were just mentioning the one from a couple years ago, that's you can look for all of that at widowjane.com. See what I did? Tied it back to the website. Boom. Not my first time doing this, but that is for people that want to try
yeah,
this. If it's not
yeah,
at your home store, you can always, there's trusted places online that you can go,
100%.
widowjane.com being one of them, to figure out where near
Yeah,
you has it and where you can go online and just have it show up at your front door.
exactly. And if you're ever in New York, you can just pop by the distillery.
I've still
We're
never
open.
been, which is sort of baffling when you think about it.
Oh,
I've
well, that's
not
silly.
been back up there in like a couple years. I don't think I've been to New York since 2022.
Oh, wow. Well, if you are suddenly desiring a trip, we are having a party in June, the Bar Convent, Brooklyn.
Oh, beautiful.
And that will be the release of our second edition of the Burrow Blend, where one of them was from the Bronx. But we also have all the other 5 boroughs represented, by some amazing bartenders, who helped blend the Borough Blend. And so it should be a really good time. It will be a New York themed party, essentially.
We can
We
play
love,
Burrow
we love
Bingo.
three. Yeah, exactly. Actually, we should probably introduce that. Maybe bring that up.
That's actually a
But
fun idea, right?
mhm.
Burrow
um,
Bingo is much better than Bronx Bingo.
yeah, yeah, you get a little bit more diversity. You know, from Brooklyn, you get like the Park Slope one where you're like, did you almost get run over by a child on a scooter? Yes, yes, I did. Um,
Oh, that used to be our trek. I would ride my bike from Astoria down to Brooklyn, and just the amount of you're taking your life in your own hands. You're taking
oh
your
yeah,
life in your own hands. There's
yeah.
no scenario.
You're safe nowhere.
No, but you do need a friend to ride with that is angrier than you are,
Oh
because
yeah.
that's your horn. Like
Hmm.
while you're trying to dodge cars and not get hit by trucks, he's sitting there yelling at everybody that comes within the perimeter of where you are. So
Oh yeah.
everybody needs a Troy Allen if they're riding around in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I get very working class London English, which I'm not when I'm writing. So I definitely get even more foul, and a lot of oys come out of me when someone cuts me off, and um I suffer uh no car driver who's trying to cut me off.
I love it.
I'll
I
have
love it.
words.
You got
Especially
to
because I'm
stay
riding
true
with
to the
my dog on my
BK.
back. So it's like me and I'm like, gotta protect my baby.
Oh yes, yes,
Uh
yes, 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 yes. 100%. You can't be having people cut you off when there's pups involved.
no, no, fresh cargo.
You bring he's your distillery buddy too, isn't he?
She is, yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
she is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She comes in every now and again to keep things in order.
Well, I absolutely love it. And Sienna, you've been beyond gracious with your time as always. The Oh my God, this is just so really, really good. Like I already know what the rest of my day is probably going to be, and it's going to
Fantastic.
be this goodness in the glass in front of me. So thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Of
I
course.
love the idea of coming up for Bar Convent Brooklyn. It's in June, so everybody that's
Mhm.
already in the know, they know, and everybody else, if you come to the city, you might be able to find some Widow Jane and have a damn good time.
Oh yeah,
All right, Sienna, thank you so much,
of
and
course.
it's always fun, man. It's always fun to catch up with you.
Yeah, it's always good to talk to you too.
Uh, Hopefully, we'll have more good whiskey to talk about in the future. And until then, I'm gonna pour another pour of this bad boy and have a damn good Friday, I think.
Yeah, sounds perfect. Good way to start it. It's 2:28. Let's get rumbling.
Oh wow, yes. All right, buddy. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Bye
Cheers.
bye.